Max Verstappen offers an interesting outlook on the title fight against the McLarens as Lewis Hamilton addresses the radio message post Monaco, which has left many intrigued. For Racing News at 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks to discuss what I think, Ian, was quite an interesting Spanish Grand Prix media day. A lovely background behind you, I must say. But we've got to get started with Max Verstappen. And, well, is he in a title fight? Is he not? A very interesting comment from the four-time world champion.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Nick. Thank you for watching and listening. So, 25 points behind Oscar Piastri, 22 points behind Lando Norris. That's Max Verstappen's situation going into this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. With 16 races to go, you would assume that Max is, without a shadow of a doubt, firmly in this title fight. Lando Norris dismissed any suggestion that he isn't as quote unquote silly. Oscar Piastri, again, likewise, didn't use the word silly, but for anybody thinking that Max isn't in this title fight, forget it. He, as far as he's concerned, he is in that mix. Max Verstappen, on the other hand, doesn't seem to think so. He was asked a question as to basically two McLarens versus one Red Bull, i.e. yourself. How are you viewing this title fight now? I don't think I'm in this title fight, said Max, effectively. It's a strange way of viewing things, but the way from his perspective, his car is so up and down in terms of performance that it stood one track not so great the next, as we saw between Imola and Monaco, whereby he won a great race at Imola, but then obviously was off the boil in Monaco, whereas he feels the McLarens are far more evenly balanced. And yes, whilst they may be taking points off one another, from Max's perspective, as he says, he doesn't think he's in this title fight. So by all means, folks, address that comment from Max in our comment section below, because we'd love to hear from you. And I've got a feeling as well that this might now lend itself to a poll, Nick. I don't know about you.
Well, in all fairness, we also said it in the podcast on Monday that we think Max is going to claim pole position and the victory this weekend because it's a circuit in Barcelona where it's medium and high-speed corners where actually the RB21, as it did in Imola, has been working.
Yeah, there is that. And then, of course, the flip side is, from McLaren's perspective, it's going to be really warm here. We're talking high 20s, gorgeous sunshine, blue skies, as you can see behind me. That's going to dominate the entire weekend. Not a cloud, not a drop of rain in sight from the forecast, from what I've looked at so far. Now, those kind of circumstances generally bode well for McLaren. So we got this fascinating trade-off with McLaren being super good in such conditions, these warm temperatures, whereas you've got Red Bull on the other side on a circuit that should really suit itself, as you pointed out, to Max's car. It's going to be one of those that it wouldn't surprise me, Nick, if those three dominate the top three for both qualifying and the race on Sunday. As to which order, hard to say at the minute, because of course we know we've got something else to talk about that may or may not play a part. We will see.
Well, shall we just discuss what you just hinted at? Because, of course, at long last, this weekend in Barcelona, we do get the new front wing technical directive where all year a lot of teams have been pointing the finger at McLaren saying, is that front wing legal? Is it not? McLaren, to their credit, have passed all FIA checks and themselves have been very calm when asked about this new TD. I imagine it's probably being the talk of the town in Barcelona today.
Yes, then from a TB, now it's regulation coming into this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. And just to give fans and viewers out there an idea as to what it's all about, basically, where we've had front wing flexing, there was a lot of complaints last year about front wing flexing. One team complaining about another, feeling that there was a performance advantage. Front wings really shouldn't flex as much as they should. The FIA started to view them by applying cameras on the car. However, they didn't feel they were getting an overall appraisal as to what those front wings were doing, despite the load tests that were being applied. So over the course of the winter, we saw new rear wing flex tests as well come into force. We saw the regulations tightened up across the first few Grand Prix. That's now been addressed. Everybody's rear wing is compliant with the current regulation. But however, the FIA decided to wait until this weekend's Grand Prix, the 9th round of the season, before fully enforcing this new front wing flexing test. Why the ninth race of the season? Why leave it so long? Why didn't it come into force over the winter? Basically, because they knew it was a difficult thing for the teams to address, bearing in mind they'd already got their front wings pretty much in place going into the start of the season, and they didn't want the teams to basically waste all that amount of time, and in particular, waste that budget by quickly having to implement a new front wing from the get-go. So they've given the teams time over the course of the season that we've had so far to try and address this. So what we're looking at now, in terms of the FIA deflection test, is a 100-kilogram weight applied evenly on both sides of the front wing. There can be no more than 10 millimeters of flex when that is applied. The previous regulation, it was 15 millimeters. Now, it doesn't sound a lot, does it? That 5 millimeters of deflection, but bearing in mind, believe it or not, that amount of flex can have a considerable amount of difference on how the wing performs, how the aerodynamics then flow over the car in both slow and high speed corners in particular. So will it have an effect? That's the pertinent question. Which team will be most affected by it over this weekend? A secondary pertinent question. In all honesty, Nick, no one truly knows. Whilst we had a good idea as to what might happen with the two-stop strategy around Monaco and what could be applied in terms of the different strategies, here we've really got no general idea at the moment as to which team is going to be more affected than another and whether or not it might shake up, not drastically, but it just might affect the pecking order slightly. Pierre Gasly, just to give you an idea as to what one of the drivers pointed out, Pierre Gasly in particular from Alpine said, within that midfield, especially, and Alpine is in that midfield mix, hundredths of a second, more than tenths of a second, are making enormous differences at the moment when it comes to qualifying. So this front wing issue, this front wing flexing, might just play a part if we're talking about hundreds of seconds.
Mr. Ian Parks, that was amazingly explained. I've got to say, because these new TDs are not easy to explain at all. That was very nicely done. On the topic of addressing things, I should probably address where on earth I am, because quite clearly I'm not in my office. There is no Lego Formula E McLaren or a dartboard. I'm actually traveling back from Wrocław, Poland. So apologies for my voice, because for those who will know why I was there to watch Chelsea win the UEFA Conference League. So I'm traveling back, hence a different background. I'm actually at the airport. So apologies if it's a little bit louder, a little bit blustery, but moving on swiftly, and apologies for my voice as well. It's somebody else who addressed something in Barcelona today was Lewis Hamilton, of course, during his cool-down lap at the Monaco Grand Prix, an interesting radio conversation with race engineer Ricardo Adami, which ended up with Lewis, it sounded like, thinking that he was being ignored and he had upset Ricardo. It led to a lot of reports, a lot of stories from various publications, and it's fair to say Lewis wasn't best pleased.
No, Lewis's radio message, he actually turned around and said at one stage, "Are you upset with me?" Now, Lewis's explanation for this in his media session on Thursday here at the circuit was there had been a lot of radio traffic issues between himself and the pit wall and vice versa. What that meant was that a lot of messages weren't coming through, being relayed. Lewis was missing out on very relevant information in terms of how to handle the Grand Prix, which, of course, as we know, was dominated by the two-stop strategy, which unfortunately didn't quite work. Nevertheless, there was this message from Lewis, "Are you upset with me?" Lewis has completely flattened any suggestion that there is any issues between himself and Ricardo. He's adamant that they are working well together, that when they have issues, they discuss them. This was one of those things that was discussed post-race. No upset whatsoever. They're on the same page. As far as Lewis is concerned, and he used the phrase, "It's BS." And we all know, of course, what BS stands for. He didn't use the full expletive. He just used the term BS. So as far as he's concerned, non-story. Let's move on. I'm happy with my engineer. All the rest of it is nonsense.
Right, just finishing off, as we're talking about Monaco, Monaco has remained a talking point in Barcelona. Obviously, a lot of drivers are sharing their views on the mandatory two-stop rule, but also from some suggestions from Alex Wurz, an ex-F1 driver, but also the chairperson of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, who has raised suggestions on how the circuit can be improved. I hear that's been a big talking point today.
Yeah, as you can appreciate, yes, whilst the two-stop strategy initially dominated Monaco as we went into it and came out of it, and obviously it was quite clear that the two-stop strategy did not work. Everybody knows, of course, the biggest problem with Monaco is the fact that you cannot overtake. The cars over a period of time have now become too big, too long, too wide, too heavy. Basically, you can park your car in the middle of the track and drive around the circuit like that, and no one, but no one, is going to be able to overtake. I love Andrea Stella's comment post-race, actually, where he said you could have 5 cylinders in that car, and the speed means that you still wouldn't be able to overtake as long as you position your car correctly. So we all know Monaco has these geographical issues. There's really nowhere where the circuit can be expanded. So Alex Wurz has come up with this great proposal, which for anybody that hasn't seen it, I suggest you try and find his X page and have a little look at the video that he came out with. 3 opportunities he felt where there's a possibility to make slight alterations. Number 1, through Fairmont hairpin, widening the apex on entry. That would then potentially allow a driver to make a kind of dive bomb move going into the sharp left-hand curve that is the hairpin itself. Number 2, coming out of the tunnel. As we know, we've got the chicane at the bottom. Extend that chicane by 80 meters. The only difficulty there is you would then have to make significant alterations to the left-hand side of the port to allow you to build that new chicane. That's the one difficulty you'd have to build into the port area slightly. The last option was coming into Rascasse and again, just widening the apex slightly to potentially offer that small window of opportunity that if a car is close enough, it might just allow that window to make a move down the inside and force a defensive driver to get out of the way, shall we say. So, given those 3 options, they've all been discussed. And very much to a man, the drivers are naturally receptive because they all appreciate that Monaco Saturday is what makes a Monaco Grand Prix weekend. And there is naturally then a lot of frustration when it comes to Monaco Sunday, a lot of rage building up. Alex Albon mentioned at one point, because the drivers do get frustrated by being held up in a train, not being able to do anything. And understandably, these are racing drivers. They want to be able to make moves, but appreciating the confines and the restrictions that the Monaco circuit offers. Will any of these proposals be taken up by Alex? Well, certainly Fairmont hairpin and Rascasse are the easiest to try and construct, to try and get the most out of. The chicane, that's the most difficult, of course, even though it naturally would afford the greater passing opportunity, because as it stands at the moment, when you look at the chicane, we've seen on rare occasions, drivers really try and go for it into that chicane. Extending it by 80 meters, that just might be enough to afford the DRS to come into operation and then, yes, play its part into allowing an overtaking maneuver. But of course, moving that chicane further down the circuit by 80 meters means you do have to build into the port to the left-hand side of the track. That would be a mammoth engineering job. And of course, unlike the other 2 options, it would be far more expensive. But nevertheless, it's stuff for the AMC, the Automobile Club de Monaco, and the FIA and the F1 to debate and determine whether any of this could be implemented going forward to future Monaco Grand Prix.
Well, I suppose only time will tell if that does happen. Ian, amazing stuff. As always, for those who've been watching this F1 Olympic, please do let us know in the comments below what you think is going to happen this weekend. And also don't forget to smash the like button, but also subscribe to the channel, which is very, very important if you want to be in for a chance of winning a scale model F1 helmet of your favorite driver. That giveaway ends as the race concludes on Sunday, with the winner to be announced on Monday. So all you got to do to enter is be subscribed. It's as simple as that. If you're already subscribed, have no fear. You're already in the draw. So best of luck. Myself and Ian will be back after practice on Friday. See you later.
I can imagine a lot of our Max Verstappen fans, Nick, are going to agree with Lando Norris's comment for once, that anybody thinking that Max is out of this title race is silly. Thanks for watching, folks. Thanks for listening. Take care as always.